I'm grateful to have safety for my children, but I cry every night, knowing my mother chose to stay behind. She said she would rather die in Tuvalu than live anywhere else. I understand her choice, but it's breaking my heart.
What you're about to discover will break your heart. This is the story of 11,000 people who are being forced to abandon the only home their families have known for 3,000 years. This isn't a war zone or a natural disaster. This is Tuvalu, a Pacific paradise that's literally disappearing beneath the waves. I just returned from Funafuti, the capital of what might be the world's first country to completely vanish due to climate change. What I witnessed there was both beautiful and terrifying. A nation where children are growing up knowing they may be the last generation to call this place home. The highest point in this entire country is just 4.6 meters above sea level. That's about the height of a basketball hoop. By 2050, scientists predict that 50% of Funafuti will be underwater during high tide. By 2100, 95% of this nation will be completely submerged. But the most heartbreaking part, the people of Tuvalu have done absolutely nothing to cause this catastrophe. Let me take you on this journey and show you what happens when an entire country starts to disappear. Landing in Funafuti is like stepping into another world. As our tiny plane descends toward the runway, you can see the entire country from your window. A thin crescent of green land surrounded by endless blue ocean. The pilot announces our arrival, and suddenly a siren begins wailing across the island. This isn't an emergency, it's just Tuesday. The siren means a plane is about to land, so everyone needs to clear the runway. You see, Funafuti's airport runway doubles as the main highway, a volleyball court, and the kids' playground. When you have only 26 square kilometers of land for 11,000 people, every inch counts. Walking off the plane, the first thing that hits you is how narrow everything is. In some places, the island is so thin you can throw a stone from the Pacific Ocean on one side to the lagoon on the other. There are spots where the entire width of the country is just 20 meters. That's narrower than a football field. But what really shocks you is the water. It's everywhere, and it's rising. During my visit, I watched families calmly moving their furniture to higher ground as seawater flooded through their front yards. This wasn't unusual weather. This was a normal Tuesday morning in October. The king tides, which occur monthly, now regularly flood the airport runway, the main road, and dozens of homes. Children wade through ankle-deep seawater on their way to school, treating it like a normal part of life. Because for them, it is normal. They've never known a world where the ocean stayed in its place. But the flooding is just the beginning of Tuvalu's nightmare. The salt water is poisoning everything. It seeps into the soil, killing the taro plants and breadfruit trees that have fed Tuvaluan families for generations. It contaminates the groundwater, making wells undrinkable. It corrodes buildings, destroys electronics, and turns fertile farmland into barren salt flats. I met farmers who showed me crops that had been growing in their families' gardens for decades, now brown and withered from salt contamination. My grandfather grew coconuts here, one elderly man explained, pointing to a patch of dead earth. My father grew coconuts here, but I cannot. The sea has taken everything. What breaks your heart most about Tuvalu is watching the children. They play and laugh and dream, just like kids anywhere else. But there's something different in their eyes when adults talk about the future. These children are growing up with the knowledge that their homeland might not exist when they become adults. I spent time at the local school, where teachers are trying to prepare students for a future that might not include Tuvalu. The curriculum now includes lessons about climate change, rising sea levels, and what the children euphemistically call overseas opportunities, which really means learning how to become refugees. Alayana, a 14-year-old student I met, told me something that has haunted me ever since. "I don't think much about climate change," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I don't have time for that. But I believe we will find a solution, and Tuvalu will still exist in 50 years. The heartbreaking optimism of youth. Alayana is already taller than some of the buildings around her school, which regularly flood during king tides. She's learning to swim not for fun, but because it might be necessary for survival. She's studying English not just for education, but because it might be the language of whatever country becomes her new home." At the playground built on reclaimed land, a desperate attempt to create more space, I watched kids playing rugby while standing waist deep in seawater. They've created a game they call flood football, where the rules change depending on how high the water gets. Their laughter echoes across the lagoon, but underneath it, there's the constant awareness that this might all be temporary. The psychological impact on these children is something the world has never seen before. Child psychologists have started studying what they call climate grief, the depression and anxiety that comes from knowing your homeland is doomed. Some kids have nightmares about drowning. Others refuse to learn to swim, saying, "What's the point?" But what I discovered next, through speaking with one mother, revealed just how desperate the situation has become for families trying to navigate this impossible reality. Now I want you to listen to Mary Ratunabuabua, a 38-year-old mother of 4 who has lived her entire life on Funafuti. What she's about to tell you will reveal the impossible choices that families are facing every single day. I wake up every morning wondering if this will be the day I have to tell my children we're leaving forever. My youngest daughter, she's only 6 years old. She asks me why the water comes into our house, and I don't know what to tell her. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that the entire world is melting? We've lived in the same house for 3 generations. My grandmother was born in this house. My mother was born here. I was born here. And so were all my children. But now, during every king tide, we have to evacuate. We pack our most precious belongings into plastic bags and carry them to my sister's house on higher ground. Last month, the flooding was so bad that seawater reached my daughter's mattress. She cried for hours because her stuffed turtle, the one her grandfather made for her, was soaked in salt water. That turtle has been in our family for 15 years, passed down from child to child. Now it's ruined, and she keeps asking when the water will give it back. My oldest son, he's 16, and he's already talking about leaving Tuvalu forever. He says there's no future here, and maybe he's right. The government has this new program where young people can get visas to Australia. Every day, I watch more of our neighbors' children disappear. First dozens, now hundreds. Soon it will be thousands. But here's what really terrifies me. My mother is 67 years old, and she has never left this island. Never. She doesn't speak English. She doesn't know how to use an ATM or a credit card. The farthest she's ever traveled is to the other side of the lagoon. How can I ask her to leave everything she's ever known? How can I ask her to die in a foreign country? Sometimes I lie awake at night and I can hear the ocean getting closer to our house. Not just during storms, but every night. the sound of the waves has changed. They're angrier now, more insistent. My children are learning to sleep through the sound of water lapping at our doorstep. The worst part is the guilt. We did nothing to cause this. Nothing. We don't have cars. We barely have electricity. We've never burned coal or oil. But somehow, it's our children who will pay the price for what the rest of the world has done. My family will be scattered across the globe, and my children will grow up strangers to each other because there was nowhere left for us to call home. Mira's story isn't unique. It's the reality facing every single family in Tuvalu right now. Parents forced to choose between keeping their families together in a sinking country or splitting them apart for survival. What makes Tuvalu's situation even more surreal is how the country is trying to survive economically while literally disappearing. With the smallest GDP in the world at just $42.59 million, Tuvalu has had to get creative about generating income. Their most famous money-making scheme? Selling their internet domain. When internet domains were first assigned to countries, Tuvalu received .tv, which has become incredibly valuable for television and media websites. They've earned over $50 million by licensing this domain, money that's been used to install electricity, create scholarships, and even join the United Nations. Think about the absurdity of that for a moment. A country that's disappearing beneath the waves is funding its survival by selling virtual real estate on the internet. There's only one hotel in the entire country, only one restaurant, and no ATMs anywhere. Credit cards don't work. The entire economy runs on cash, but they use the Australian dollar because their own currency would be worthless. Most people work in fishing or government services, but even these industries are collapsing as the fish populations migrate away from the warming lagoon waters. The tourism industry, which could theoretically help, is almost non-existent. Tuvalu receives fewer than 2,000 visitors per year, making it the least visited country on Earth. There are only 4 flights per week, and they're often cancelled due to weather. When tourists do come, there's literally nowhere to put them, and almost nothing to sell them. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Tuvalu's economy is what they call remittance dependency. Increasingly, the country's survival depends on money sent home by Tuvaluans who've already left. Young people emigrate to Australia, New Zealand, or Fiji, get jobs, and send money back to their families who are still trapped on the sinking islands. It's become a cruel economic system where the country's survival depends on its people leaving forever. In a desperate attempt to create more livable space, Tuvalu has embarked on an ambitious land reclamation project. They're literally building new land from scratch, dredging sand from the lagoon to create artificial islands that they hope will remain above water longer than the natural ones. The main reclamation site is a strip of land 780 meters long and 100 meters wide, wrapped in massive sandbags to protect against erosion. It's here that children play rugby while standing in knee-deep water. Fishermen cast their nets into increasingly empty waters, and families gather to watch the sunset over an ocean that's slowly swallowing their world. This reclaimed land has become the symbol of Tuvalu's fight for survival. Every cubic meter of sand dredged from the lagoon represents hope, defiance, and desperation, all rolled into one. Children who play here understand that they might be playing on some of the last solid ground their country will ever have. But the project is a race against time. The land is being built at a cost of millions of dollars, money Tuvalu doesn't really have, while sea levels continue to rise faster than the construction can keep up. It's like trying to build a sandcastle while the tide is coming in. The environmental cost is also enormous. Dredging sand from the lagoon destroys the coral reefs and seagrass beds that fish depend on, further damaging the already struggling marine ecosystem. Tuvaluans are being forced to destroy part of their environment to save another part, an impossible choice that exemplifies their entire situation. What's happening in Tuvalu now is creating a new category of human displacement that the world has never seen before: climate refugees. Unlike traditional refugees who flee war or persecution, Tuvaluans are being displaced by forces completely beyond their control. In 2023, Australia signed the world's first climate migration treaty with Tuvalu, called the Falapili Union. This groundbreaking agreement allows 280 Tuvaluans per year to emigrate to Australia as permanent residents, with full access to healthcare, education, and social services. It's essentially the first climate visa in human history. The response was overwhelming. Over 3,000 people, nearly a third of the country's population, applied for just 280 spots. Families are being torn apart by lottery systems, with some members winning visas, while others are left behind. But even this innovative solution raises impossible questions. Is 280 people per year enough when the entire country might be uninhabitable within decades? What happens to Tuvaluan culture, language, and traditions when the people are scattered across the globe? How do you maintain a national identity when your nation no longer exists? Maria Tebano, one of the first climate migrants to reach Australia, described the complexity of her emotions.
I'm grateful to have safety for my children, but I cry every night, knowing my mother chose to stay behind. She said she would rather die in Tuvalu than live anywhere else. I understand her choice, but it's breaking my heart.
Perhaps the most science fiction-like aspect of Tuvalu's survival plan is their decision to become the world's first digital nation, recognizing that their physical territory might disappear completely. The government is creating a virtual version of Tuvalu in the metaverse. This digital Tuvalu will preserve the country's islands, culture, history, and landmarks in virtual reality. Citizens will be able to visit their homeland online, hold virtual cultural ceremonies, and maintain their connection to Tuvaluan identity, even after the physical islands are gone. It sounds like something from a movie, but for Tuvaluans, it's a lifeline. When your great-great-grandmother's grave is about to be underwater forever, a virtual memorial becomes precious. When the tree your family has gathered under for generations is about to be swept away, a digital version becomes a sanctuary. Foreign Minister Simon Kofe made international headlines when he delivered a speech to the UN while standing knee-deep in seawater, announcing Tuvalu's digital nation plans. "We're not just fighting for our land," he said, as waves lapped around his suit. "We're fighting for our right to exist as a people, even if our land disappears." What's happening in Tuvalu isn't just a local tragedy. It's a preview of what's coming for coastal communities around the world. Rising sea levels are a global phenomenon, and Tuvalu is just the first to face complete submersion. The Maldives, with a population of 540,000, faces similar threats. The Marshall Islands, Kiribati, and parts of Bangladesh are all watching Tuvalu struggle with growing alarm, knowing they might be next. Even major cities like Miami, New Orleans, and Venice are beginning to plan for scenarios that once seemed impossible. Tuvalu's Prime Minister Feleti Teo has become one of the world's most powerful voices on climate change, not because of his country's economic or military might, but because of the moral authority that comes from facing extinction. No national leader in history has ever faced this question. He said at a recent UN conference, "Will we survive or will we disappear under the sea?" The international community is struggling to respond. How do you provide aid to a country that's disappearing? How do you maintain diplomatic relations with a government that might not have territory to govern? What happens to Tuvalu's seat at the United Nations if Tuvalu no longer exists? These aren't theoretical questions anymore. They're urgent realities that the world needs to answer within the next few decades. As I prepared to leave Tuvalu, I spent my final evening at the reclaimed land, watching children play in the fading light. The tide was coming in, slowly covering the volleyball court where kids had been playing just an hour earlier. Parents calmly called their children to higher ground, a routine they've performed thousands of times. An elderly woman named Teleke sat beside me, watching her granddaughter splash in the rising water. "She's 6 years old," Teleke said quietly. "Maybe she'll see 30 before this place is gone. Maybe not. But she's happy now, and that's what matters." That's the tragedy and the beauty of Tuvalu. Life continues with joy, love, and hope, even as everything familiar slowly disappears. Families still gather for meals. Children still learn to fish. Couples still fall in love and get married. But underneath it all is the constant awareness that this might be the last generation to experience any of it. The children of Tuvalu are growing up as living bridges between a disappearing past and an uncertain future. They're learning traditional songs that they might only be able to sing in exile. They're mastering fishing techniques for waters that might not exist when they're adults. They're falling in love with a homeland they know they'll probably have to leave behind. What we're witnessing in Tuvalu isn't just the loss of 26 square kilometers of land. It's the disappearance of a 3,000-year-old culture, a unique way of life, and an entire nation's dreams for the future. When Tuvalu finally slips beneath the waves, the world won't just lose a country, it will lose a part of human civilization itself. The last generation of Tuvalu is living, breathing, and hoping right now on a thin strip of coral in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They deserve more than our sympathy. They deserve our action, our support, and our commitment to ensuring that what's happening to them doesn't happen to anyone else. Because if we can't save Tuvalu, what makes us think we can save ourselves? What I witnessed in Tuvalu changed everything I thought I knew about climate change. This isn't a problem for the future. It's a crisis happening right now to real families, in a real place that you can visit if you hurry. The children I met there, the families forced to make impossible choices, the elderly people who refuse to leave their ancestral homes even as the water rises around them. They're not statistics. They're human beings facing the first climate apocalypse in modern history. Their story is a warning for all of us. If we can't find a way to help Tuvalu survive, then we're all just living in slow-motion versions of the same sinking island. What shocked you the most about Tuvalu's situation? What do you think should be done to help them? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more investigations that reveal the hidden crises shaping our world.